The Crimson Tide Crisis. The emergency alarm echoed through the crystalline halls of the Galactic Peace Union, headquarters on Centauri Prime. Ambassador Theron Vex pressed his 4 hands against the viewing port, watching another evacuation fleet disappear into hyperspace. His compound eyes reflected the distant glow of dying stars, each one marking another system consumed by the terror that had emerged from the void 6 months ago. 12 systems, he whispered, his mandibles clicking. With grief, 12 entire civilizations gone. Behind him, the emergency council chamber buzzed with desperate voices. Representatives from 47 species argued, pleaded, and shouted in languages that the universal translators struggled to process. They had tried everything. The Union's most advanced weapons barely scratched the surface of what the scientists had dubbed the Crimson Tide. Their strongest shields lasted mere minutes against its advance. Even their greatest minds could not comprehend what they faced. High Counselor Zara Keth, her pale blue skin shimmering with telepathic energy, approached Vex with careful steps. The Centaurians were natural empaths, and the psychic weight of billions of deaths had taken its toll on her kind. Her silver eyes met his compound ones, and he felt her mental touch, gentle but urgent. "The Andromedans just sent their final transmission," she said, her voice barely audible above the chaos. "The Tide reached their home system 3 hours ago. They estimate 6 hours before complete consumption." Vex's exoskeleton darkened with sorrow. The Andromedans had been among the Union's founding members, a peaceful species of philosophers and artists who had contributed countless works of beauty to galactic culture. Now they would be nothing but raw material for the ever-growing horror that swept across space. The Crimson Tide defied all understanding. It appeared to be part biological, part mechanical, a writhing mass of red tendrils and metallic components that consumed everything in its path. It ate planets whole, absorbing not just the matter, but somehow the very essence of life itself. Worlds touched by the Tide became dead husks, drained of all energy, all possibility. Have the Vorthan War fleets made any progress? Vex asked, though he already knew the answer from Zara's expression. "Their dreadnoughts lasted 18 minutes, she replied. "The Tide absorbed their quantum torpedoes and used the energy to grow larger. General Krex believes it learns from every attack, adapting faster than we can develop new weapons." In the chamber behind them, the arguments grew more desperate. The hegemony of worlds proposed retreating to the galactic rim and building an impenetrable barrier. The Federation of Minds suggested a massive psychic assault, combining the mental powers of every telepathic species. The Trade Union wanted to negotiate, somehow, with an entity that showed no signs of intelligence beyond its hunger. All futile. All hopeless. Vex had seen the classified reports. The Tide's growth was accelerating. What had taken weeks to consume in the outer systems now took days in the middle territories. Soon it would take hours. The mathematical projections were clear. Within 6 standard months, the Tide would reach the core worlds. Within a year, it would have consumed the entire galaxy. "There is one option we have not considered," Vex said quietly. Zara's mental touch sharpened with curiosity and alarm. "What option?" "The Deathworld quarantine zone." The telepathic feedback from Zara's shock nearly knocked Vex backward. Around them, several other representatives who had overheard began to gather, their faces showing mixtures of horror and desperate hope. "You cannot be serious," whispered Dr. Melker of the Rigelian Science Collective, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "The death zone is forbidden for excellent reasons. The species in that region are too dangerous to contact." "Are they?" Vex asked. "Or are they simply evolved to survive in conditions we consider impossible?" The death zone, officially known as the quarantine sector, contained 17 star systems that the Union had declared off-limits nearly 2 centuries ago. The worlds in that region were classified as incompatible with civilized life. They experienced extreme weather, deadly radiation, toxic atmospheres, and geological instability that would kill most known species within minutes of exposure. But life had evolved there anyway. Not just survived, but thrived. The dominant species called themselves humans, and they lived on a world so hostile that Union scientists had initially refused to believe the sensor readings. Earth experienced massive storms that could level entire cities, earthquakes that split continents, temperature variations that ranged from water freezing cold to metal melting heat, and more varieties of deadly diseases and predators than existed. On most entire star systems combined not, and the humans loved it. The preliminary surveys showed they fight constantly, Dr. Melker continued, not just against their environment, but against each other. They have wars, conflicts, violence as a way of life. They are everything the Union stands against. They are survivors, Vex replied. And right now, survival is all that matters. The debate that followed was fierce but brief. Half the council called Vex's proposal insane. The other half called it their only hope. In the end, desperation won. By a margin of 3 votes, the council authorized a first contact mission to the Sol system. Vex volunteered to lead it himself. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks aboard the fastest ship in the Union fleet, the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Dream. As they traveled, Vex studied every piece of data the Union had gathered about humans over the past 2 centuries. The picture that emerged was both terrifying and fascinating. Humans were remarkably adaptable. They lived in environments that would kill most species, and they had spread across their entire planet despite its hostility. They had survived ice, ages, volcanic winters, asteroid impacts, and plagues that had wiped out other species entirely. More remarkably, they had not just survived, but had turned their world's dangers into strengths. They used controlled explosions to power their vehicles. They harnessed their planet's violent weather for energy. They had even learned to use their world's deadly microorganisms as medicine, turning diseases into cures. But what struck Vex most was their approach to conflict. Unlike the Union's peaceful philosophy of harmony and cooperation, humans seemed to thrive on challenge and competition. They pushed themselves to excel not in spite of danger, but because of it. As the Harmony's Dream dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, Vex prepared himself for the worst. The reports suggested humans were aggressive and territorial. First contact protocols called for maintaining maximum distance and presenting no threat. What happened next changed everything Vex thought he knew about humans. Unknown vessel, this is Earth Defense Control, came a voice over the communication system. The tone was calm, professional, and surprisingly friendly. Welcome to the Sol system. We've been expecting you. Vex stared at the communications panel. In shock? Expecting us? We've been monitoring your transmissions for the past 6 months, the voice continued. We know about the Crimson Tide crisis. Please proceed to coordinates we're transmitting. We have people standing by to help. The ship that met them was unlike anything in the Union fleet. Where Union vessels were smooth, curved, and aesthetically pleasing, the human ship looked like it had been built for war. Angular, armored, bristling with weapons and sensors. It radiated purposeful efficiency, but the human who appeared on their main screen was smiling. I'm Captain Marcus Chun of the Earth Defense Force, he said. Dr. Elena Vasquez will be handling the formal first contact procedures, but I wanted to welcome you personally. We are honored to finally meet you. Dr. Vasquez was a small human with dark hair and intense eyes that seemed to see everything at once. She met them at the docking bay of Luna Station, Earth's primary orbital facility, with a team of scientists and diplomats who had clearly been preparing for this moment for some time. Ambassador Vex, she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. We've been studying your languages and cultures for decades. We're ready to help however we can. You know why we are here? Vex asked, still struggling to process how different this first contact was from what he had expected. The Crimson Tide, Dr. Vasquez replied immediately. We've been tracking its progress through your communications. We've also been preparing countermeasures. Countermeasures? Vex's mandibles clicked with surprise. You have weapons that can stop it? Dr. Vasquez smiled, and there was something in that expression that reminded Vex that humans came from a death world where everything was trying to kill them. Ambassador, we don't think of it as a weapon. We think of it as an invasive species. And humans have been dealing with invasive species for millennia. She led them through Luna Station, which was larger and more sophisticated than many Union core world facilities. Humans moved through the corridors with the easy confidence of a species that had made the hostile vacuum of space their second home. More surprising were the non-human figures moving among them. Vex recognized at least 6 species that had been reported as extinct or missing in Union space. The Morallans? He asked, stopping to stare at a group of crystal beings that should have been on the other side of the galaxy. Refugees, Dr. Vasquez explained. They contacted us 8 months ago when the tide consumed their system. We've been taking in survivors ever since, but the quarantine was never our choice, she said firmly. The Union declared us too dangerous to contact. We respected that decision, but we never stopped listening. When people needed help, we helped. They entered a vast chamber filled with holographic displays showing the galaxy. Red zones marked the tide's advance, while green zones showed areas under human protection. Blue zones indicated evacuation routes and refugee camps. It was a logistics network that rivaled anything the Union had ever created. How? Vex asked, overwhelmed by the scope of what he was seeing. We've been preparing for something like this since we first learned we weren't alone in the galaxy, Dr. Vasquez replied. Humans have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We hoped we'd never need these contingencies, but we prepared for them anyway. At the center of the chamber stood a woman in military uniform, her gray hair pulled back severely, her eyes the color of storm clouds. She turned as they approached, and Vex felt the weight of her attention like a physical force. General Amy Roberts, she introduced herself. I head Earth's Xenobiological Crisis Response Division. We need to talk. The briefing that followed was unlike anything Vex had experienced in 2 centuries of diplomatic service. The humans listened to his description of the Crimson Tide with intense focus, asking questions that revealed a deep understanding of biological and technological systems. They took notes, ran calculations, and cross-referenced data with a speed and efficiency that put Union computers to shame. Show me the consumption patterns, General Roberts said, studying the tactical displays. How does it spread? What does it target first? How does it adapt to resistance? As Vex provided the information, he watched the humans work. They didn't debate or argue like the Union Council. They analyzed, planned, and reached consensus with a unity of purpose that spoke of long practice facing impossible challenges. It's definitely learning, Dr. Vasquez concluded after reviewing the data. Each encounter makes it more efficient. But that might also be its weakness. How? Vex asked. Learning takes time, Captain Sean said, and adaptation requires exposure. If we can hit it with something it's never encountered before, something that changes faster than it can adapt, ... You have such a thing? Vex asked, hardly daring to hope. Dr. Vasquez and General Roberts exchanged a look that spoke of shared knowledge and difficult decisions. Ambassador, General Roberts said finally, how much do you know about Earth's biosphere? Only that it is hostile to most life, Vex replied. Not hostile, Dr. Vasquez corrected. Competitive. Earth doesn't just have life, Ambassador. It has life that fights for survival every single day. Viruses that can rewrite genetic codes in hours. Bacteria that can survive in environments that would melt most metals. Fungi that can break down almost any organic compound. And all of them constantly evolving, constantly changing, constantly finding new ways to survive and thrive. The implications hit Vex like a physical blow. You want to use biological warfare against the tide. We want to introduce it to Earth's biosphere, General Roberts said. Let our microorganisms do what they've been doing for billions of years. Compete, adapt, and survive. Outside the station's viewports, the blue-green world of Earth turned slowly in the void. From this distance, it looked peaceful, beautiful, even. But Vex was beginning to understand that this world was not just the home of one dangerous species. It was an entire ecosystem of danger, a planet-sized weapon forged by evolution itself. Will it work? He asked. We think so, Dr. Vasquez replied. But we need to act fast. Our models show the tide is accelerating toward the galactic core. It will reach the system in approximately 6 weeks. 6 weeks? Vex felt his exoskeleton go cold. The projections said 6 months. The projections were wrong, General Roberts said grimly. It's learning faster than anyone thought possible, which means we have one chance to stop it. She turned to face the tactical display, where the red zone of the Crimson Tide pulsed like a heartbeat across the galaxy. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to war. As alarms began to sound throughout Luna Station, Vex realized that his desperate gamble had become something more. The galaxy's most feared species was about to become its greatest hope. But as he watched the humans spring into action with the coordinated efficiency of a species born to conflict, one question haunted him. Would even the legendary ferocity of the Deathworlders be enough to stop the Crimson Tide? The answer would come sooner than anyone expected. The Deathworlder solution, the transformation of Luna Station over the following 3 days, was nothing short of miraculous. What had been a busy but orderly space facility became the command center for the galaxy's most desperate military operation. Ships arrived hourly, not just human vessels, but craft from dozens of species that had somehow learned of Earth's offer of sanctuary. Ambassador Vex watched from the observation deck as another refugee fleet dropped out of hyperspace. These were Corellians, their bioships still bearing the scars of their encounter with the Crimson Tide. They had lost everything except their lives, and even those had been saved only by humanity's intervention. The Vorthan war fleet should arrive within the hour, Captain Chun reported, joining Vex at the observation port. General Krex is bringing everything he has left. 47 ships, including their last dreadnought. And the others? The hegemony of worlds has committed their entire merchant marine for evacuation support. The Andromedans managed to save their knowledge archives before their system fell. The trade union is providing logistics coordination. Chun paused, watching another ship dock. 18 species so far, all working together. I don't think the galaxy has ever seen anything like this. Vex had to agree. In all his years as a diplomat, he had never witnessed such cooperation between traditionally rival civilizations. Fear of extinction was a powerful motivator, but there was something else at work here. The humans had done more than offer sanctuary. They had offered hope. How are the preparations proceeding? Vex asked. Chun's expression grew serious. Doctor, Vasquez wants to brief you personally. There have been developments. They made their way through corridors that buzzed with activity. Human technicians worked alongside Regellian scientists, while Centaurian telepaths coordinated with AI systems. The integration was seamless, as if these species had been working together for centuries, rather than days. Dr. Vasquez met them in the main laboratory. A vast chamber that had been transformed into something between a biological research facility and a weapons development center. Containment units lined the walls, each one holding samples that made Vex's exoskeleton crawl with instinctive fear. "Ambassador," she said, her face drawn with exhaustion, but her eyes bright with determination. "We've made significant progress, but we need to discuss the implications of what we're about to do." She led them to a holographic display showing the Crimson Tide's latest advance. The red zone had grown noticeably since the last update. "The tide consumed the vegan system 12 hours ago," she reported. "Our projections now show it reaching Earth in 32 days, not 6 weeks. It's not just learning. It's accelerating. It's learning curve." "But you have a solution," Vex said, noting the confidence in her voice despite the grim news. "We have several solutions," Dr. Vasquez replied. "The question is which one will work best and what the consequences will be." She gestured to the containment units. "We've isolated 17 different Earth organisms that we believe can affect the tide. Viruses that attack its biological components, bacteria that can break down its metallic structures, fungi that can disrupt its energy transfer systems. But we're not just dealing with individual organisms anymore," she continued. "We've created hybrid strains, enhanced versions that combine the most effective traits from multiple species. They're more aggressive, more adaptable, and more destructive than anything that exists naturally on Earth. The implications were staggering. You have weaponized your planet's biosphere." "We've optimized it," she corrected. "The question is whether we can control it after we release it." General Roberts entered the laboratory, her uniform bearing new insignia that Vex didn't recognize. "Dr. Vasquez, we need to make a decision. The Andromedans just reported Tide scouts probing the Centauri system. We're out of time for further testing. What are the options?" Vex asked. Dr. Vasquez activated a new display showing 3 different scenarios. Option 1. We release a limited biological package designed to slow the tide's advance. Low risk, but also limited effectiveness. It might buy us months, but probably not enough to evacuate the core worlds. Option 2, General Roberts prompted. Full deployment of our enhanced organisms. High probability of stopping the tide permanently, but significant risk of the biological agents spreading beyond our control. We could end up creating something as dangerous as what we're trying to stop. And option 3? Vex asked, though he suspected he already knew. Dr. Vasquez's expression grew grim. We use Earth itself as a weapon. Open our quarantine facilities. Release everything we've been studying and let our planet's natural biosphere do what it does best. Fight for survival. Ambassador, she said, her face drawn with exhaustion, but her eyes bright with determination. We've made significant progress, but we need to discuss the implications of what we're about to do. She led them to a holographic display showing the Crimson Tide's latest advance. The red zone had grown noticeably since the last update. The tide consumed the vegan system 12 hours ago, she reported. Our projections now show it reaching Earth in 32 days, not 6 weeks. It's not just learning. It's accelerating. It's learning curve. But you have a solution, Vex said, noting the confidence in her voice, despite the grim news. We have several solutions, Dr. Vasquez replied. The question is which one will work best and what the consequences will be. She gestured to the containment units. We've isolated 17 different Earth organisms that we believe can affect the tide. Viruses that attack its biological components. Bacteria that can break down its metallic structures. Fungi that can disrupt its energy transfer systems. But, we're not just dealing with individual organisms anymore, she continued. We've created hybrid strains, enhanced versions that combine the most effective traits from multiple species. They're more aggressive, more adaptable, and more destructive than anything that exists naturally on Earth. The implications were staggering. You have weaponized your planet's biosphere. We've optimized it, she corrected. The question is whether we can control it after we release it. General Roberts entered the laboratory, her uniform bearing new insignia that Vex didn't recognize. Dr. Vasquez, we need to make a decision. The Andromedans just reported Tide Scouts probing the Centauri system. We're out of time for further testing. What are the options? Vex asked. Dr. Vasquez activated a new display showing 3 different scenarios. Option 1. We release a limited biological package designed to slow the tide's advance. Low risk, but also limited effectiveness. It might buy us months, but probably not enough to evacuate the core worlds. Option 2? General Roberts prompted. Full deployment of our enhanced organisms. High probability of stopping the tide permanently, but significant risk of the biological agents spreading beyond our control. We could end up creating something as dangerous as what we're trying to stop. And option 3? Vex asked, though he suspected he already knew. Dr. Vasquez's expression grew grim. We use Earth itself as a weapon. Open our quarantine facilities. Release everything we've been studying, and let our planet's natural biosphere do what it does best, fight for survival. The silence that followed was profound. Vex finally understood why the other species of the galaxy had been so afraid of. The humans. They weren't just willing to use their world's dangers as weapons. They were prepared to sacrifice their entire planet if necessary. The risks? He asked quietly. Earth becomes uninhabitable for any non-adapted species, General Roberts replied. Possibly permanently. The biological agents we'd release would make the planet's surface a war zone between organisms that exist nowhere else in the galaxy. But the tide would be stopped? Our models show a 97% probability of complete tide destruction within 72 hours of contact with option 3, Dr. Vasquez said. The remaining 3% accounts for variables we can't predict. Before Vex could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Captain Shun's communicator crackled to life. Captain, this is Station Control. We have an emergency. Hyperspace signature. Something big just dropped out of FTL at the system's edge. They rushed to the command center, where the main display showed a sight that chilled Vex to his core. A section of the Crimson Tide, larger than any they had previously encountered, was moving toward the inner system at impossible speed. How? Did it get here so fast? General Roberts demanded. It must have sent scouts ahead, Dr. Vasquez replied, studying the readings. Look at the energy signatures. This isn't a random advance. It's a coordinated assault. The tide formation was unlike anything they had seen before. Instead of the chaotic mass that had consumed other systems, this looked almost military in its organization. Tendrils formed distinct groups, while the metallic components arranged themselves into what could only be described as battle formations. Learning from our preparations, Vex realized. It knows we're here. It knows we're planning something. Estimated arrival time? General Roberts asked. 18 hours, came the reply from the tactical station. The command center erupted in activity. Human officers coordinated with alien counterparts, preparing defenses that everyone knew would be inadequate. The refugee fleets began moving to safer positions, though nowhere in the system would be truly safe if the tide reached Earth. We have to choose now, Dr. Vasquez said. There's no time for further analysis. General Roberts looked around the command center at the faces of beings from across the galaxy who had come to humanity for salvation. Options 2 and 3 both require deploying from Earth's surface. We'll never get the biological packages to the tide in time. What about option 1? Vex asked desperately. Won't work against something that size? she replied. "We need everything. We have." The weight of the decision was crushing. They were asking humanity to sacrifice their homeworld to save a galaxy that had rejected and quarantined them for 2 centuries. "There is another possibility," Dr. Vasquez said quietly. "We combine all 3 options." "How?" "We launch option 1 immediately, using our fastest ships to deliver the biological packages directly to the Tide. While that's engaging their defenses, we prepare option 2 as our main assault. If both fail, we implement option 3 as our final gambit." It was insane, desperate, and probably suicidal. It was also the most human solution possible. "Do it," General Roberts ordered. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of desperate activity. Human ships launched with their deadly cargo, racing to intercept the Crimson Tide before it could reach the inner system. Behind them, Earth itself was being transformed into the ultimate biological weapon. Vex watched from Luna Station as the first engagement began. The human ships were tiny compared to the Tide mass, like insects attacking a mountain. But when they released their cargo, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The biological agents spread through the Tide like fire through dry grass. Sections of the mass began to collapse as Earth's microscopic warriors found purchase and began their ancient work of competition and survival. For a moment, it seemed like option 1 might be enough. Then the Tide adapted. "It's learning," Dr. Vasquez reported, her voice tight with tension. "It's analyzing the biological agents and developing countermeasures in real time." The Tide's advance slowed but didn't stop. Worse, it began to change, incorporating elements of the Earth organisms into its own structure. It was not just surviving the biological attack. It was becoming stronger because of it. "Option 2, General Roberts ordered. "Launch everything." The second wave was massive. Ships from Earth, enhanced with the most aggressive biological agents humanity could create, met the Tide at the edge of Mars' orbit. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Space itself seemed to come alive as billions of microscopic warriors clashed in a conflict that transcended the merely physical. For 6 hours, the outcome remained in doubt. The Tide writhed and convulsed as Earth's enhanced organisms tore through its structure, but it continued to adapt, continued to learn. Section by section, it began to overcome even humanity's most aggressive biological weapons. "It's too smart," Dr. Vasquez said, her voice hollow with despair. "It's learning faster than our organisms can evolve." That's when Vex understood something that the humans, for all their ingenuity, had missed. "Dr. Vasquez, what makes Earth's biosphere unique isn't just its aggressiveness. It's its diversity." She looked at him with sudden understanding. "The competition isn't just between organisms and environment. It's between the organisms themselves." "Option 3, General Roberts said. "But not just Earth's quarantine facilities. Everything, every organism, every virus, every bacteria. Let them all fight each other and the Tide simultaneously." It was the most desperate gamble in galactic history. Humanity was about to turn their entire world into a biological war zone where the only rule was survival of the fittest. The quarantine breach happened at locations across Earth's surface. Centuries of carefully contained biological horrors were released simultaneously, joining with Earth's natural biosphere in a conflict that defied description. The planet's atmosphere turned dark with spores and viral clouds. The oceans churned with microscopic battles. Even the ground itself became a battleground as competing organisms fought for dominance. When the Crimson Tide reached Earth, it encountered not just biological weapons, but an entire ecosystem at war with itself. Asterisk. The result was chaos beyond comprehension. The Tide tried to adapt, but how do you adapt to a system where the rules change every second. How do you learn to overcome an environment where survival itself is a constant battle between innumerable competitors? For 72 hours, Earth became a vision of hell. The tide twisted and writhed as it was consumed not by any single organism, but by the sheer, overwhelming competition of life itself. It tried to incorporate Earth's organisms, but they turned on each other and on it with equal ferocity. In the end, the Crimson Tide didn't die. It simply couldn't compete. When the biological storm finally cleared, space around Earth was filled with the debris of what had once been the galaxy's greatest threat. The tide was gone, broken down into harmless organic compounds that drifted like dust among the stars. But the cost was enormous. Earth's surface was uninhabitable, its atmosphere toxic to most known life forms. The humans had saved the galaxy by sacrificing their homeworld. "I'm sorry," Vex said to Dr. Vasquez as they watched the aftermath from Luna Station. "Your beautiful world... will recover," she replied with quiet confidence. "Earth has survived worse. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, mass extinctions. Life always finds a way, but will it be the same?" She smiled, and in that expression, Vex saw the indomitable spirit that had made humanity the galaxy's unexpected saviors. "No, it will be better, stronger, more diverse. That's how evolution works." In the weeks that followed, as the galaxy began to rebuild, the quarantine around Earth was officially lifted. More than that, the Sol system became the new headquarters of an expanded galactic alliance, with humanity taking their place not as outsiders, but as protectors. The refugees who had fled to human space chose to stay, working alongside their saviors to create something new. The Death World had become a sanctuary, and its people had transformed from feared monsters into beloved guardians. The refugees who had fled to human space chose to stay, working alongside their saviors to create something new. The Death World had become a sanctuary, and its people had transformed from feared monsters into beloved guardians. Ambassador Vex established the first permanent alien embassy on Luna Station, watching as his people learned to work alongside the species they had once considered too dangerous to contact. The irony was not lost on him. In their darkest hour, the galaxy had turned to its greatest fears and found its greatest hope. Years later, when Earth's surface had healed and new cities rose among the chaos of its renewed biosphere, Vex would often stand at his office window and watch human children playing in parks that would have been death traps to any other species. They laughed and ran among plants that could kill with a touch, breathed air that would poison most beings, and thrived in an environment that had literally saved the galaxy. The humans had been right about one thing: they were survivors. But more than that, they were proof that sometimes the galaxy's greatest monsters were actually its greatest heroes, waiting for someone desperate enough to ask for their help. The Deathworlders had become the galaxy's guardians, and the universe was safer for it.